Welcome back to the Mix and Music Podcast. I'm your host, DK, and with me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Lululun.
I'm not gonna lie, that was kind of fun to say out loud.
I haven't watched that anime yet, so I didn't get the reference, but Lou told me to do it, so here we go. Welcome to this episode of the podcast. We're gonna talk about we're gonna probably make and edit these categories a little bit as we get going, but it's about 15 different things that we wish we knew or that we did know before we started music.
I do wish I did knew them.
Yeah. We did know, my bad. We did know, or we wish we knew at the beginning of our music paths. And one of the things I think is really important to dictate or to properly articulate is that this list is for those that are pursuing music as an audio engineer and as a career. Now, most of these do apply to those that are pursuing like composition work or producing or songwriting, sure, but keep in mind that these are specific for us as like audio engineers, and in our case, mixers, mastering engineers, etc., whatever it is. And this is not a list. So, like for example, the first one on this list is like learning how to do taxes and keeping track of your expenses is like the first thing. That's not important if this is not a business or if you're doing this as a hobby.
Yeah,
but. So keep in mind with that on this list. But that being said, like these are really, really great. These come from experience of whether we wish we did them, like either forms of regret. Most of these are actually things that Lou and I have done really well at that like in retrospect proved to be significantly important, really, really good. And a few of these are things that we didn't know until later. So yeah, or like general thoughts later. And then so we're going to get started on this. Number one, I said it first, is staying on top of your taxes every year and keeping track of your business expenses. Now, this is huge because this is how you avoid getting taxed. And this is how, like, you do not want the IRS up your butt. You do not want to be in debt to the IRS. That's how you get screwed. And most people don't have to pay, especially in the first few years where you're not making that much money. There's not a lot of taxes to pay, if any at all. If you are underneath, like you have good business expenses and tracking and you write those off and you show an income of whatever the threshold is, you'll still make returns. In most cases, you'll still make a federal income return without any money being withheld. And if you show really low income reports. So just keep that in mind. Even more so if you have wife and kids. Like if you have dependents, then even more so. Like the threshold of like the income, whatever the income is where you start getting taxed, and like below that is like where you're still either not paying or getting paid. That threshold is higher. It's the lowest when you're single man. Single man is when it's the lowest. If you are married or have dependents, that's when it gets significantly higher. So that's just something like keeping track of those expenses. Do some research, talk to somebody. And I don't think a lot of people hire a CPA. If you are a single member LLC, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit anyway. By the way, this is not official financial advice. I don't want to get sued for this. This is not us saying that. That's like the first thing that we're going to say. I'll probably put that in the bio as well. But I'm just telling you what I do, is that I hire CPAs only for my businesses that have multiple members. So when Lou and I had a studio and there was multiple members, I would hire a CPA. When it comes to any and all businesses that are just me, myself, whether it's a single member LLC, which we're going to talk about in a little bit as well, or just a sole proprietor, where I'm just using my social security number rather than a business EIN number, I do not hire CPA. I do it all by paying $35 or $30 a month for Intuit QuickBooks online, which automatically tracks and will help me sort and categorize my income and expenses. I do it all once. I do the entire year's worth once at the beginning, like in January. But if I were smarter, you can actually, and if you're making more money and planning on paying taxes, like you're planning on hitting those expenses, which most likely won't be happening in your early years, like if you're planning on hitting that threshold and beyond, you can actually pay your federal taxes in quarters, like quarterly. So you don't have to pay a ton out in cash, but like either save for those, keep that in mind, look into your local laws and like what the thresholds are, maybe even hire a CPA once just to see what they do, what forms they file. Just be aware of that. The only thing out of all this is that's like ridiculously stupid is California taxes. This is something so stupid. So my number 2 point is registering your business. I think it is important to register your business for protections like liability protections. So someone can't sue you as an individual if you make a mistake, but rather it'd have to sue your company, which is it's just insurance. It's really cheap to do so. You can go to like the Secretary of State. In most states, I'm pretty sure you could just go online to the secretaryofstate.gov website for your state and just register your business. You'll also have to do it. You'll have to do it statewide and federal wide. So you get an EIN, which is also really easy to do. It costs very little to do. Get an EIN and register your business with the state. The only exception with this is that if you are outside of California or if you are planning on moving to California eventually, fucking never ever register your business in California if at all possible, because California is the only state in the United States that has a minimum $800 tax no matter how little you make. You could go $10,000 in debt year over year and you would still owe California $800. And you can avoid that completely by just not registering in California. That means if you have family that you're willing to like use their residential home address as, by the way, this is not financial advice. I do not recommend doing this. But I've heard, allegedly, you can use like family members that live outside of California and use their home address if they're willing to do so to register your business in their state with their address, and they just forward the mail over to you or whatever. That would save you $800 a year. Again, hopefully at the end of the day, if you're running a business, $800 a year is fairly trivial, but that's not going to be trivial at the beginning. So just do be aware of that. Avoid doing that in California if at all possible. Also, if you are in Los Angeles specifically, this is something Lou and I found out like a few weeks ago. Conducting a business in Los Angeles City, Los Angeles County, they charge a city tax. It's not a lot, it's very little, but be aware that it is based on gross income. And if you make less than $300,000, from what I understand, there's like exemptions for conducting creative businesses. Last time I checked, it was something like, don't take my word for this, allegedly it's like, if you make less than $300,000 a year gross, then you can be exempt for doing creative businesses in Los Angeles County. But if you didn't know about this and you didn't file for Los Angeles County and you didn't file for that exemption, if you pay those taxes late with the late fee attached, I don't think you can get exempted from them. So you're going to have to pay them, which is what Lou and I are finding out right now. That sucks. Luckily, it's not that much, relatively speaking, compared to like state and federal, but it is just annoying. So be aware of that. Okay, that's like the basic stuff. That's like the taxes stuff. I wish I was significantly better at expenses. And Lou, you know me to be someone that is already quite good at those things, but
yeah.
But it's like those things really do help a lot, a ton. And again, like a lot of people like pay extra for the CPA and stuff, but I'll tell you right now, like I don't. So I just do it all myself on QuickBooks. I'm really reliable and I trust myself very much with those things. I've done it. And with taxes in general, like especially if you're using like a TurboTax or whatever, like it's a little scary. Like it took about 3 to 5 years of doing them yearly before I'm like, oh yeah, no, I know what I'm doing now. Like I know what to expect every year. Like, because they don't teach it in school, especially if like you're self-employed and stuff. It's like you have to do the self-employed version of TurboTax. There's like a few extra things. You have to submit your 1099s which are different tax forms in America. By the way, these are all different in different countries. So if you're listening from like Germany, there's a lot of like German and Australian and general European, Asian listeners. That doesn't apply for you. But if for your country, just make sure that you're on top of that. Okay. Anything that you want to add on that, Lou?
Honestly speaking, it is something that I wish I knew before I started, but when I started, I was 18. So maybe I just didn't focus too much on economy in my school, but in reality, this is obviously something that if you started as a kid, it's something that you can study on now. If you're currently going into the process, it's not too late to learn these things. But it's something like DK said that we learned even when we were in our late 20s, early 30s. You know, not everything is going to be obvious and not everybody has the idea of opening a studio right away. But if you want to have your own teams, if you want to have your own business like registered under your own name versus working for somebody else, then learning these things is way more important than one would think at first. So I know it may not seem relevant yet, but understanding these details would also help you understand the people who are potentially employing you and trying to understand their mindset when they make certain decisions, which could actually give you a leg up for growth in whatever companies you're working with.
Yeah. This is also just one of those things. There's a ton of things on this list that like are like really excessively annoying. Yeah. But like, so I wish someone just told me and validated to me that like, validated the concept of like, no, these are things that are really, really annoying, but you need to be doing them. Like everybody is doing them. Nobody talks about these things, but everybody is doing them. Nobody is exempt from them. Like, especially if you grew up for some, I'm going to say it. Forget it. I'm going to say it. Many people that pursue creative careers, and this is just humans in general, beyond creative careers, that are young, and maybe it's just because the fact that people are young. I was one of these kids included. Don't understand the weight of consequences. We're never taught the weight of consequences. This is one of those things that you cannot just ignore. You can't just ignore. So it's not like, oh, I'll just do them later as I get older and learn about them. No. The government does not give you excuses. There's no form for validating your excuses. You're going to be fucked if you're not careful. So just be minded with that. Okay, mindful of that. All right, the third thing that I think is really, really important if you're in school currently or if you're planning on going to school, I genuinely think taking entrepreneur or marketing classes are a significant better use of time than taking music classes. Now, so like if you are pursuing a bachelor's degree and it's not like some sort of like certificate type music degree, like if you're properly going to an accredited school here, like most degrees in the music with whether you're pursuing a music degree or not, even when pursuing a music degree, a properly accredited college or university will you must have like credits for electives, and those credits could be like math, but instead of like typically you can choose between trigonometry or economics. Between those two, or like advanced calculus versus economics, like is the same exact credit. Go for economics, 100%. Do more business stuff. So if you're in school, if your elective is like advertising or marketing versus some other creative elective, go for the marketing and advertising rather than the other elective. When there's an elective between a business-based one and like a fun one, I know it's fun to do the fun one, and I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I would heavily, heavily recommend choosing the elective that would actually help your business in the long term. I literally think this is something that is like not a lot of people talk about. And I still think that it's like worth getting a music degree, and it's even more worth getting a music degree if you take those electives from a properly accredited school. I'm not saying you need to go as far as getting a minor in those things, but I am saying that there's tons of rooms for electives, and you should go out of your way to make those your electives if you're in college or if you're in school. If you're not in school, I think you should be reading a ton of books, or you should be seeking mentorship from and participating in your local entrepreneurship circles. Like, if you're young, you might have a friend that's like starting a business. I would actually be very open-minded to be like, help them start their business, work for a startup, see what it's like to struggle and figure out, like, other people in a non-music setting struggle with taxes and paying their employees and payroll, and like be intimately close to these small companies in one way or another. Just being entrepreneur minded, which is mostly like a learned thing, but just in general, like I said it as a mindset thing too. It's like, before anything else, before you're an audio engineer, before you are a nerd, before anything else, you must accept that you are first an entrepreneur. And that being an entrepreneur is very different from being a good audio engineer. This is huge, especially if you're trying to do this as a career. Lou, any thoughts on that? If not, we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily want to say, hey, marketing over everything, right? But the reality is this. Your social media ends up becoming your resume 9 times out of 10. The reason I say this is, in our industry, nobody asks for a paper resume. They either know people that you know, which means that your branding is everything you are and how you've been around those who know each other, or they're just getting to know you. They see your social media and they say, cool, this guy just posts a lot of fart jokes and just takes pictures of his dogs. It must not be that serious. He's just a normal guy, because that's pretty normal guy stuff, whatever, fart jokes and dogs, whatever. But if your social media looks like, hey, I have this award, I have this accreditation, hey, I have X event going on, here's some behind the scenes of some of the work that we're doing, hey, this is the latest project I've put on, I got tagged in something, let me repost it in my stories, let me stay active and make sure it's related to the work. People will see you as more active. And the sad part is that doesn't necessarily mean that you are active. We've seen a lot of guys that, I think Ivan was one of those in our
circle
in our circle, but the last event we had was the the 1 million downloads celebration, where he even said, he's like, one of the people that was a mentor to him said, hey man, like, the reality is, fake it till you make it. Every day that you're at a studio, take a photo, and post it. Whether you're doing a session or not, you're in the studio and people will see you as somebody who's always in the studio.
Yeah.
Not too many people are going to look past the photo too far, and that's the reality. Marketing sometimes is exactly that. It's an ad that you see, it's got something that caught your attention, and you don't really look too far before showing interest.
Yeah.
Your attention's been piqued, and that's kind of your market. If you're on social media and you look like you know what you're doing, you're posting links to how they can get in contact with you, how they can book you and all that kind of stuff. You've built a good website, the website looks professional and everything. All of that has to do with marketing. So usually in my eyes, I've seen people have a better turnout because social media is kind of a good resource in their toolbox than people just handing out flyers on the streets.
Yeah. And this is where, like, being entrepreneur minded as a mindset, the reason why this is important is because it kind of dictates a lot of the ways that you pursue things. For example, when building a website, a lot of audio engineers that are not entrepreneur minded just have like a PR website. There's no call to action. There's no way to contact them. If I was looking to hire them, I don't know how to do that. And that's just like one small thing missing, but that does lower your potential lifetime earnings. Right? You might miss 1 or 2 clients every once in a while because they have no idea how to contact you. So they just decide to go with someone easier to contact. Right? It's like a ton of these 0.5% things. Even with social media, if you're truly entrepreneur minded, you understand the difference between like posting for like to show my friends and family versus posting for my business. So for example, the example that you gave of like showing a picture that you're in the studio, that's entrepreneur minded. And in no way is that fake actually. What I think is like immoral and fake is when you're promoting like an Instagram page for like a studio and then or like your own personal mixing services and you're posting pictures of other people's gear pretending that it's your own. That is immoral.
Oh my God.
That is immoral and that's like lying. But that being said, if you're in that studio, if you're working in that studio, even if you're just stopping by, it is good to capitalize on these because you're posting on behalf, remember, you're posting on behalf of a brand. You're not posting behalf of you on an individual. And when you're entrepreneur minded, that part of your brain that separates between the business and you should be split. It's not the same. DK mixes, DK as a brand versus DK as a father and a friend, totally different. And that part of your brain should be split early on from the get-go.
I would say that,
I don't think fake it till you make it is as big of an issue as people think. I think when you start lying, it becomes an issue. But I don't think faking it till you're making it is insinuating lying.
Yeah, I think one of the most underrated things that you can take reassurance in if you don't like the idea of being too markety. Let's be honest. Not everybody, I know I'm not super fond of this. I don't like feeling like a billboard. Like I just don't like putting on a face for the sake of making a reel most times. You know, I understand that if I want to make some YouTube videos on things that I think are important, like how does a compressor work and things of that nature, I can't just be stone-faced, walled and all that kind of stuff. Like, you know, you got to put on a smile at least. But I also don't like that feeling like you have to force an expression. So I get it for some people where you just don't want to be behind the camera. You don't want to show your face. That's totally cool. It's understood, but kind of get over yourself at the same time because you would be surprised how much social media content creation actually plays a factor in your end results when it comes to your income at the end of the month. Now, I think one of the most underrated parts of this is keep it organic at the same time. Like, just be you. Like, when I see DK's things, I also see DK. I don't see marketing side DK or not father side DK, because once in a while you see a post from him and his kids. And that has nothing to do with fucking music, but it has everything to do with who DK is. So part of it is, hey, you're marketing yourself as a human being. You know, it's like, it's me hanging out with my kids. Like, the guy you're hiring is a normal guy. It's not just a marketing wall. Like, I hate to say it. I've never liked Steven Slate marketing. He just feels really
I don't want to give advice.
You know,
I don't want to give
just saying,
advice
like,
on how to market.
No, you can market however you want. Obviously, his company is wildly successful. Who am I to say that that was a bad idea? It worked. But I did come to a realization yesterday to a YouTuber that I've been watching for a while. I originally thought he was like a low subscriber count. Never looked at his subscribers. I just really liked the videos, so I hit subscribe one day. And now he's on my feed and stuff, and videos come up that I like watching, and it's cool. It's just playthroughs of horror games. It's nothing crazy. But at the start of every video, he always does this like, hey guys, I just want to like take a moment, talk to you guys. Let's talk about mental health real quick, this and that. And I've always kind of found that as like an odd thing that might sway people from not wanting to subscribe to him, because it's kind of like a topic not many people want to watch a game before, right? It's just something that's kind of left field a little bit, at least from things that I've seen. So I always thought like he maybe had like 20,000 subscribers, 30,000. Yesterday I saw that he had 600,000, and I was like, you know, the funny thing is, we may think that just being a genuine kind of nerdy goofball kind of guy wouldn't get him a lot, but you'd be surprised. Keep it organic to yourself, but you got to post.
Yeah.
Because thinking that it was a little weird, thought that he was going to get a lower subscriber count. I'm a third person looking at it, and this guy is way beyond what I thought he would be. And I'm sure he kind of thought that at first too.
Yeah, I don't want to linger too long on this topic because this could be an entire episode on its own, and maybe it should be. Leave a comment if you do want to hear more about this. But in general, to kind of recap on what you say, when you're marketing and creating a social media brand on your business and you're entrepreneur minded, do whatever you think is right. And I think rationalizing is like when your brain is fighting your spirit. Like, you shouldn't be doing this, but like you rationalize and make reasons why it is a good idea. Rationalizing is evil. I really do believe that. Like, just follow your gut. Like, if you genuinely don't mind exaggerating a little bit, I don't think lying is ever okay. But if you want to do like a Steven Slate route where it's like really
salesy,
over the top, salesy, not exaggerated. What is the word? Grandiose.
Yeah,
like
grandiose.
If that's the style versus like really subtle and personal and thoughtful. This is up to you. Do whatever you want, and that's what makes any company's brand relatable to everybody. Is that you can be selling fucking barbells like from weightlifting, and you can have a company where it's like a dude that's like. A company that's like more thoughtful and simple-minded and based around Zen and meditation versus like another company where their marketing is like, strong guy. And like both would have different, both are potentially valuable. I mean, in the long term and in like the bigger schemes, like there might be data on which one does better. But at the beginning, don't worry about that. Like just do what's most authentic to you and just be aware that you can pivot. So that's enough for that. Don't lie ever. I'm super, super against dishonesty in any capacity. So just be aware. Just you don't want to do that to yourself. That's one of our points that we'll get to later. This is a free, simple one. This is an easy one. We've always said that a trip to IKEA can make you more money in the long run than a trip to Guitar Center. And on that note, what's the cool thing about that is that you don't have to pay money at IKEA. If you need furniture and decorations in your studio, a lot of it can be found for free on various, like on Craigslist, if you're on KSL or like on Facebook Marketplace. Be aware, if you are like a single woman, going to these like free pickup locations that are listed on Craigslist might be scary. Like take people with you, or if you're even if you're a dude, like maybe go with a friend,
or have something on you. Dun dun dun.
I don't know. Whatever. But like, just be careful. But a lot of furniture is free or super cheap online. There's no reason to be buying that stuff. So like there's a lot of free furniture that people just like want to get out of their house, and just like if you're willing to take it out of their house because you have a truck or you're willing to break it down or whatever, it can be really affordable.
You'd be surprised what you find on Facebook because Anna showed me once a big giant, like I think it was like a 3 foot by like 6 foot or 7 foot tall, like Victorian mirror that she fell in love with. I look at the price tag. I'm like, that's $2,000 to look at myself in the mirror. Like, no. But then I go on Facebook Marketplace trying to see if I can find anything. And sure enough, I saw one for like $100. Somebody was just trying to get rid of one. It's giant. It's massive. They don't want to move it and break it and then just not have any value. So they're like, you pick it up, you take it to your own place. If it breaks on the way, that's on you. And it's like, cool. Anna still didn't want it because apparently there's a whole superstition around used mirrors. I don't get it, but hey, we'll find a cheaper option.
I didn't think about that. This will lead into the next one as well. But if you do have a community like either church or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or like whether it's religious or community based, if you're part of these communities, most of the time, like especially if you go to like a church or a mosque or a temple or something like that, just telling the congregation of like, hey, if anybody like is willing to give away a couch, like I'm willing to pick it up. Just saying that, putting that out there, you'd be surprised how many people are like wanting to get rid of things for free.
Yeah, sometimes I'll post like, hey, does anybody want this? And like I'll get 6 DMs, like I'll take it.
Yeah. So just be aware of that. Like and the cool thing about that thing specifically is that you're doing them a favor for picking things up for free. Like they have to pay for the dump, or they have to pay to get it out, or like take the time to tear it down themselves. So it's like, it's worth it for them. Like you're oftentimes doing them a favor. And this goes for like refrigerators as well. So like anything that you need for the studio, just be aware of that. The next point that I want to make is I wish, and I think from the beginning of your career, you should be building communities and building a base early. This is one of the only things that those that pursue music later on in their life miss out on heavily, is that when you start from ground zero, when you're 35, there's less people starting at ground zero at your age.
Mm-hmm.
And the cool thing about being young is that everybody's at ground zero. If you're in college and you're just trying to get your foot in the door, so you're offering free mixing or free audio engineering, most people around you are at your level, so they're cheap enough that they want to take advantage of that. There's a plethora of opportunities to help each other out and start from ground zero. When you're 35, 40 trying to get into music, this is objectively one of the most difficult things. There's not a lot of other 35-year-olds that are equally as talented, that are starting out. They're either been doing it for a while, or they're just like you, where they've waited a long time, so they haven't developed their talent. So they're just older, So this is a risk, but I will. So like whether you're building the community or participating in another community, from the beginning, you should be finding your people. Whether that's like something that's like a church, like we said, or a mosque or a temple, something religious, or like a local songwriting club, or like if you're in school, like the songwriting audio engineering club, or like even if it's your fucking like LGBTQ community in your local or school or whatever district, if it's like some sort of student government, like just whatever it is at every, like if you're older, like if you're 35, like just participate in your local community. I know a couple older people that got into audio later that they participated in their like local government, like HOA county programs, and they like actually built and take the lead on local county or city funded songwriting clubs or like workshops.
That's
like
cool.
So you can like take lead in that. Like whether you're taking the lead in building that community or participating in already existing communities, you should be getting out of yourself and like participating in these communities early. Now, the way that I did it, especially in California here with Lou, like when I did in Utah, it was like we had hip hop uncensored open mic nights, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but being in Utah when everything is censored because they're all Mormon, that was a big deal. That was like huge.
Yeah.
Here we did like monthly pass the aux and like open houses and stuff. Those things like go, if you have a commercial space, those things do go a long way. And they may not pay out immediately, but it's like branding, PR recognition. And some things are for PR and some things are for marketing. Marketing is the intent of getting money in. PR is for the intent of having like a reputable brand, where it's like not necessarily about the money, it's about the image. So even if it is a PR thing, those things are important. Just being part of a community goes a long, long way. Don't be a shut-in. Don't be a shut-in. I don't give a shit how introverted you are. It is in your best interest to participate in various communities. Even if it's relatively unrelated, just participate. Running group, working out group, doesn't matter. Local communities there. Lou, any thoughts on that one?
Honestly, this is going to sound funny, but it's doing these kind of events is a quick way to be the man without having to necessarily be the man just yet. Reason being is that you're the one that's kind of organizing a community to kind of come together, and you're kind of having an opportunity to showcase not just your space, but your services and things of that nature. But you showcase that, hey, look, I'm willing to open my space and my time and my resources to kind of help a lot of other people network, because just as awkward as it may be for you to do it, it's just as awkward for them. So coming to these kind of community things, knowing that a lot of other people are actually much more receptive to networking, introducing to new faces and things of that nature, that's why they're there. You're actually kind of creating opportunity for them to grow, and creating said opportunity is something that is actually appreciated by the community. So I say, it gives you the opportunity to be the man without having to be the man just yet, is because you're the one that's not just helping yourself in this process, but you're also helping others. Because we've seen where a lot of people have actually, connected and, have actually like grown their network, their, I guess you could say, their resources, whether that be meeting new producers that can help, pitch beats or this and that to you for your next upcoming album as an artist, whether that be session musicians that you met at the party for a producer who says, hey, I would love to have real guitars in the future. Like, I'm definitely interested in working together. The reality is the entire community needs the entire community. And if you're creating situations where they can actually come together, then yeah, you'd be surprised. And that always goes back to marketing, just like you said, like the difference between like, what was it, PR and marketing. But, you're kind of building a brand. Your brand is now community forward minded. And as far as the PR goes, like, hey, you're the man.
Real quick, before we go on to the remaining points, I want to do a quick ad. Who we're sponsored by is right by us. We do an exclusive episode, 2 exclusive episodes every single week, 2 new exclusive episodes that are always technical focus, or as much as we can, we try to keep them technical focus. 2 new episodes a week. They're shorter episodes, very digestible. Not only do you get those ad-free and you get 2 new episodes every single week alongside our free content, but you also get access to all 200 plus of the ones that have been released beforehand up until this point. So you almost double the amount of episodes available to you on the Mixing Music Podcast. All right. So to get access to those, all you have to do is go to mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive. Be aware that they are hosted on Spotify, so you see them natively if you are on Spotify, although you can upload the custom RSS feed that Spotify gives you after you pay through Spotify. So if you are wanting to stay on Apple Podcasts, for example, you can upload the custom RSS feed and import that into Apple Podcasts if you so wish. So once again, that's mixingmusicpodcast.com/exclusive to gain access to those episodes. All right, let's keep going with the list here. Building community. There was one thing that I wanted to say about building community is that on your point, to be the builder of community is good. Not if you can participate, that's really good as well. But if you can build one, I think that there's like a little bit more of a PR thing if you do it that way. I think it's a little bit easier. Something that but that does take a little bit more extroversion and managerial skills and commitment on that level. So just be aware of that. Cool. One thing that I think is really important if you're an audio engineer, the next point here, if you are an audio engineer, even if you are outside of LA, you should learn Pro Tools. Just bite the bullet, buy Pro Tools, start working on Pro Tools. Just force yourself to work in Pro Tools on all sessions and just Google any questions you have while you're working with clients, right? Or after you're working with clients, just keep Googling these things and learning how to use Pro Tools. Just bite the bullet, do it. If you're not an audio engineer, if you're not pursuing an audio engineer path, you're pursuing producing or film composing, then don't even worry about Pro Tools. I exempt you from any guilt or shame that you feel for not using Pro Tools.
Now, if you're trying to become a recording engineer that's in-house for a major facility, I hate to say it, just shove Pro Tools down your throat and get it over with.
And it's even it's not even just that. If you're doing it on your own, passing sessions back and forth between engineer to mixer to mastering engineer.
Yeah.
And for producers that are working over online as well as if you ever decide to pivot and go into dialogue editing for video games or film scoring. If you want to do something audio engineering outside of the music industry and more in film and TV, you have to have Pro Tools under your belt. That's just the fact of the matter. If you're trying to be a composer or anything else, knowing Pro Tools is good and important, but not necessary. Next bullet point, I think this is really important. Something that Lou and I always push for is I wish that I was much earlier into exercising. And I'm going to be very specific about this. It's not even about getting fit or staying thin or being muscular. It's not about that. It's about getting out of the studio and getting vitamin D. Get vitamin D and eat healthy. It's not even about how your body looks or body dysmorphia. It's nothing about that. It's about getting out of the studio. It's about doing things for your body, getting some sun, going on a hike. Just go outside. Because for the first 5 years, I can speak on this from personal experience. I am naturally, I have naturally high levels of melanin. I am a brown person when in the summer times I get dark. And in the past, when I was skateboarding every day outside in high school, I got really, really dark. I'm naturally a very dark brown person. 5 years, I didn't go outside a single summertime. I I am as close to Caucasian as you can be for being brown. And it's just like, I've lost all of that. And I don't think that that's like me being brown is good. Brown equal good. Ooh, I don't think it's that.
Well,
I do think
Mandy.
I think it like goes to show like how easily you can just forget to touch grass and you just get lost in the sauce. Like I genuinely regret not going outside as much. It's not about building muscle. It's not about running and staying thin. It's like mostly mental health and mostly just removing myself. And like, you know how we say we need ear breaks while we're doing mixes? Going outside is business breaks. It's just remembering like life and putting into context what you're doing. I wish I was doing that. So get some vitamin D, get some sunlight in you, eat healthier foods, take the time to make your own food that is healthy instead of just, I know people love mac and cheese, Lou, I know you're one of them, but like instead of just eating mac and cheese and pizza every single day, like that's a choice.
Do you think that's what I do all day? Because I hate to tell you, it is what I do all day. No.
No. But I mean, like, So just be aware that I've heard a lot of people advise. I was actually one of the people that said, like, if you're in your early 20s, when you're like able to like live on 5 hours of sleep and pizza every day, do it. In retrospect, don't. Take the time. Like you can do that a lot. You can rely on pizza and mac and cheese a lot, but like do intentionally take the time to go on a hike and just get some sunlight in you to like see other people. And if you, going back to what we said about the community thing, if you have a set responsibility, whether it is agnostic or religious of any kind, or what's the word? Not agnostic. What's the word I'm looking for? Secular or religious of any kind. Doesn't matter. Go and do those things. Join a basketball pickup group that you just go outside for weekly. Join a puzzle-loving club. Join a LARPing group for all I care. You know, I don't care. Join a Pokemon card collecting group. Just do things outside. It's not so much about... because we've heard people like say like have hobbies outside of music. It's not even about that. You're going to find the reason of why that's good for you, whether it is having friends outside of your main hobby or main pursuing, or like forcing yourself to just escape from the music industry for just a few minutes every week. Whatever the reason is, I think that everyone objectively will find value in just some sort of formal escape every week, every day, potentially. Cool. That's enough about that. Lou is big into gym. I've recently started the gym, but as you know, I'm a runner, but I just skateboarding, just being outside. All right, touch grass. All right. Another super practical one that I think is really good is instead of buying outboard gear, if you're getting into recording, instead of buying a ton of outboard gear, I would actually recommend buying something like UAD, where there is real-time DSP processing. So you can use plugins for real-time compression and EQ recorded into your DAW. Because I think in the beginning stages when funds are low and you just need things to work, those things work really, really well. They're really reliable. And I've never had an issue with those things. So like UAD or some sort of similar real-time DSP processing. And the cool thing about UAD or any sort of interfaces at that level do have ADAT expansion. So like if you're eventually going to start recording drum kits, sure, you can get an Apollo Twin. But the cool thing about Apollo Twin is that it has an ADAT extension, like ADAT ins. So you can get something like a Focusrite Octo Pre, where it's like 8 extra preamps that you just do ADAT in, and now you have 10 channels of preamps going in for the cost of like one piece of outboard gear.
Oh yeah,
less than one piece of outboard gear, because the Octo Pre is cheaper than most single channel preamps.
Or you could double down and buy an Apollo X8P as an expansion. And now you get more DSP processing. You get more ins and outs for any kind of converter needs if you really want to stay within their ecosystem of converters. But aside from that, you get more unison preamps available to you to where you could do analog modeling. You want a Neve on your snare and an API on your kick? Go ahead. You know, with the Apollo system, it's pretty damn convenient. You know, I know when we built in the mix, we started with HDX. Well, actually HD native, because we were using the Lynx card. But once I got the HDX card, we went to that. And we still had people that were like, oh, you don't have an Apollo? You don't have an Apollo? And it wasn't because like the Apollo is the best thing. It's actually consumer-wise or prosumer or whatever level, it's almost kind of like a basic standard of like if a producer books a studio, if you're looking to own a studio, the Apollo is actually kind of the most commonly requested interface there. Just because of how simple it is to use it. Most people are familiar with it. So if you're looking to collaborate with people, you're inviting people over and you want to be able to pass the aux, so to speak, in a situation, you know, getting something that is going to outlast whatever niche personal preference is kind of a good idea. You know, you could have links all in the studio, but if somebody asks to plug in their laptop to the system because they like their plugins, they like their DAW, they have their computer set up the way they like to work, you'd be surprised how much easier life gets as a studio owner if you have an Apollo.
Yeah, for real. So on that note, like, don't worry about outboard gear. So we're talking about, instead of outboard gear, just get like an Apollo system as well. That's the point there. Those work really well. On that note, when it comes to microphones and outboard gear, if you everybody needs microphones if you're a recording engineer, but if you don't really need outboard gear. But when you get mics or if you get outboard gear, don't worry about buying the real deal. Get clones. The sound difference is marginal and they're just different. It's not necessarily better. It's just different. And the cool thing about buying clone gear is that if you decide to change your mind on those things and you decide you don't need it, it's way easier to sell at value clone gear because those are significantly higher in demand. So there's less risk in those in general.
I will stipulate that real quick. The ones that will not be of higher value will be like the Slate mic or the Townsend Labs mic or the UAD clone mics. And the reason for that is just that they don't actually clone one specific mic. They do a million things. So unless you're in that ecosystem, it doesn't actually make any sense to buy those things. So what DK is referring to is like a Warm Audio U47, Warm Audio U87 kind of thing. You know, if you want to go up and go into like the Brower mics or things of that nature, there's also, you know, clones even in that range.
Aventone is great.
Yeah. Promin microphones, you know, it's just there's clone microphones in every demographic financially. So, you know, that's what he's referring to. If you think you're going to get your value back on a Slate mic, I'm sorry, but no, because now they need to have a subscription. Yeah. So
thanks
we're not
for specifying.
talking those.
Yeah. So thanks for specifying. And also you should, on that note, I think it's actually a really good idea. You bring up a good point. When buying clone gear or any sort of gear, like look up their resale value. Like you should consider how quickly things resell. Like if you go on Reverb, you can go to sold listings, like filter out just sold listings and see how often they sell, how quickly they sell, and what price they sold for. Not how much they're listed for.
That's a very recent feature too, because for a long time, people would go to eBay for that. Yeah. But I'm so glad that Reverb finally added that a few years ago.
Yeah. So that goes into our next point here, which is like almost always buy used. Almost always buy used. There's no real reason to pay the premium for the new thing. There's no reason for that.
Unless you got a Tube Tech situation or a C800G situation where buying it new is cheaper than used just because of demand. Like you should be willing to wait for your gear. And if you're not, then you're basically paying a premium just because you're impatient.
Good. Yeah. So for example, like with UAD is like famously so. They just came out like a month or two ago. They just came out with their next generation of interfaces. And so Gen 3 now is cheaper, which makes Gen 2 even cheaper. So if you have just like wait and get used, get the previous generation.
And I'm not trying to say anything on the generation changes or anything like that. I'm glad that they made a Dante option, but I was looking into it. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of changes converter wise. Like they did a couple changes to the workflow and everything, but yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I understand that shiny and new usually means hot new thing on the market, and that's cool to have. But in my experience, not every manufacturer is creating revolutionary changes every time a new generation comes out. A good example of this is the Lynx Aurora N uses the same converters as the Hilo. And I believe the clock is what was different. And then the Hilo 2 came out, and now the clock is even updated and the converters are updated. So it used to be that you bought the Hilo because you wanted better converters and clocks. But if the clock wasn't the biggest selling point for you, then the new Aurora N had the same converters. So now you didn't have to have the Hilo if the clock wasn't the thing you're after. So looking into what you're buying will actually reveal whether you need to actually spend all this money or not. You know, just be aware of what you're buying before you pull the trigger. Which I don't know if I'm pulling this out of order or not, but you know, one of the things I had brought up before we started recording was save your money because it gets expensive. If you can buy used all the time, absolutely do it. There are times where it can bite you in the butt. If it's something that you're going to be pulling around, like I recently just bought a console setup, and this setup's costing me roughly 15 to 17,000 before taxes. I bought most of it new because I want manufacturer warranty. I want the extended warranty. I want this and that, so that if something were to go down while I'm on the road, then at least I have little to no cost. Now, if you buy something that expensive and you know you're going to be moving it around a lot, and that there is risk of damage or wear and tear, then having a warranty could benefit you. But if we're talking like $1,000 interface and it's going to stay on your desk forever, and there's a used one for $600. I'm just saying Black Friday is not going to give you that much of a better deal. And they're usually, I've personally never seen an Apollo go down. You know what
I've
I mean?
had one Apollo. My twin died.
Oh, your twin died?
Yeah. But I mean, regardless, that shouldn't change your mind because it lasted very long for many, many hours.
Yeah. So it's one of those, unless you're making a purchase that's really that big, because it can get expensive real quick.
Also, I bought my twin new,
used.
actually. I bought my twin new.
See, and I bought all my Apollos used. I've never purchased a brand new Apollo.
Yeah.
And I've had like 3, and they've never gone bad on me.
Cool. Another thing about buying used as well is when you're buying, do buy cables used, specifically Mogami or Livewire. I think there's like Canary might be another one. There's a few brands where no matter where you get them, how you got them, no packaging, no receipt, you literally take them to a Guitar Center or cable supplier. They will exchange a broken cable for no questions asked at the site. So if you have Mogami or Livewire, is that still the case at
Guitar Center? Because I remember at one point they said you need a receipt proving that you bought it there for them to do in-store, but you can go to the Marshall warehouse and do the same day, no receipt.
Good question.
I don't know. I think they did a policy change because they were losing money on it, I think was the issue.
I don't remember, but Mogami and Livewire do have, look into that. That's actually a really good point. I didn't know that. But typically that's why you would buy the cables new or used, because if they were broken or if they ever did break, they test them, make sure that they're broken, and then they replace them. They did replace them in store. Lou's looking to confirm that right now, it sounds like. So we're going to move on to the next thing because this episode's getting a little long. Another bonus point is that if you are young and you're like wanting to get a day job just to work and make some money, work at Guitar Center if possible, or some sort of like music retail shop. Cables do go really cheap. There's a lot of like really cheap microphones that like the discounts are worth working there because some of the things that you get new are cheaper than you would ever buy them used. Just a little hint. I think both of us have worked music retail at one point at the beginning of our careers. The next one, while Lou is looking it up.
Okay, so here's what I'm seeing. No, even if you didn't buy your Mogami cable at Guitar Center, you can still likely get it swapped for a warranty replacement. There is there as long as it is a genuine Mogami cable and it falls under their no excuses lifetime warranty. However, you may need to contact Mogami directly or provide proof of purchase to verify authenticity depending on Guitar Center's policy. So Guitar Center can change their policy, which I think was the case. But at that point, now we have to look into Guitar Center. But Mogami is leaving it up to the retailer to decide if they want you to prove that you even bought it yourself or not. But at which point, I'm going to be honest, most people that work at Guitar Center don't care enough to make it part of their hourly to be verifying your receipt. They really don't care. They'll just probably swap it out without verifying your purchase.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, that's always why we buy Mogami too. It's like
Yeah.
not just a trusted cable, not only is it Japanese, but it's also lifetime warranty. Also, the Livewire Elites are like genuinely.
Yeah. It's better
This is
shielding
really weird.
compared to the other stuff.
Yeah, Livewire Elite actually has arguably better shielding than Mogami Gold, which is interesting to talk about.
Which goes back to branding.
Yeah. So that being said, going on to the next thing, we talked about branding awareness, building a brand on purpose. I don't think we need to go into that, and that we've done episodes on that before. The next one is really, really important, and I think really underestimated alongside the idea of like being entrepreneur minded and like learning. I think everyone in their early 20s, or no matter what age that you're starting to get into this and take this seriously, you should be reading more books. And I do think books as the medium is the best and most reliable source for information. That being said, this extends into educational podcasts like ours. This obviously audiobooks is one of them too. Mentorships, or like some sort of like what's the group? Just mentorship groups in general. Learning, actively be learning all the time. With the amount of like audio podcasts, music podcasts, like the first 150 episodes of Six Figure Home Studio with Brian Hood and Chris Graham before they split up and Brian Hood changed the podcast to Six Figure Creative. It was 150 episodes, hours and hours and hours of just how to build a studio setup from home, like how to build a career, like logistical, technical business information specific to audio engineers. Like that is so valuable, alongside books as reference. And this is not, for when it comes to books and stuff, being entrepreneur minded, this goes into like regular books, like regular business books. You should be reading and looking into marketing books like Contagious by Jonah Berger is fantastic. Even if you get into like Tim Ferriss and his 4-Hour Work Week, like all of these generic business books, you should be getting into or listening to the audiobooks or listening to podcasts. These are really helpful, not just for mindset, but like they do give a lot of technical, practical tips to grow your business that is significantly more applicable than you would ever think to your own business in this niche small music industry. So just be aware of that. Read books. It's the second best thing to mentorship. It's literally like when it comes to books, unlike podcasts or anything, like books have been edited so much that it is the most condensed form of practical knowledge that you could ever it's so condensed. There is nothing, and it's written for the purpose of digestion and application. So like take the time to do that. I also think that this goes into like figuring your own shit out. This is not on our list, but like taking care of your mental health and figuring out what you want to do. Like The Courage to be Disliked is not a business book, but a book nonetheless that I think helps my business because it helps me figure my own shit out. My favorite business book of all time, the number one book that I always recommend is The Go-Giver. The Go-Giver is an easy read. It's a must read for anybody getting into this getting into this business. Things like that. All right. The next one that Lou's going to talk about is hearing protection.
Yes, let's get into that. So I think everybody is a sinner in this case. So basically, your ears are wildly important. And even me, I talked about this last week with DK as I had found out some new details that was so reassuring and everything that like you couldn't get me off the ledge of happiness. Like I was diving headfirst into that suicidal bomb of happiness. Which sounds like the wildest thing ever, but just imagine I'm diving into smiles head first. Basically, growing up, I was prone to ear infections and things of that nature. So they did perforation in my eardrums to help alleviate like fluid infections and all that.
They punched holes in his eardrums.
Literally with their fists, just like boom. Talk about a fisting to the face. No, I'm just kidding.
Boo!
Boo, red man.
Red man, yeah.
Basically, I've always kind of grown up with the notion of like, okay, my ears may be whatever they may be, because anytime I go to like the doctor, they tell me, "Oh, you're fine," but I'm like, "Yeah, but my ears are perforated," you know. But that's because I actually never took a look inside myself. I don't have the medical gear or anything of that. So I got curious and I'm like, "Hey, let me test my hearing," because I work in live sound. I work in studios. I've been playing in bands when I was a kid and stuff like that. I never wore hearing protection at that point. I didn't start wearing hearing protection until I was about like 21, 22 when going out, because at that point I was really working and really conscious, because I had developed tinnitus from playing in bands, you know, loud China cymbals and stuff just crashing near your ear, performing live, going to see your friends live and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, you know, I don't want this to get any worse. Like, and thankfully, like after taking this test, I was able to find out like, hey, it's actually not that bad. You're within normal ranges for the average person. Not only that, but your ears are fully healed up, and they were actually able to show me on a screen like, hey, your ears are not perforated anymore. And apparently, according to my hearing, it's actually average to above average of like people who work in studios, not live audio, which is kind of reassuring because apparently a lot of people who work in live audio don't protect their hearing. And there was an actual graph where they could show me like my frequency changes from left ear to right ear, which one has more is more susceptible to certain frequencies on one side or the other, whatever. But point is, you know, he made it kind of a big point. He's like, you know, you'd be surprised. Like you're kind of like an outlier in the case of like you actually protected your hearing early on enough where most people don't start protecting their hearing until their late 20s, early 30s, when their ears are starting to be a lot more sensitive because of the damage they took in their early 20s, like going to clubs, going to bars, DJing, going to concerts, festivals, you know, just running around, exercise. Some guys get into boxing and they blow out an eardrum because of the impact of the glove created a suction force that damaged their eardrum, you know. So if you're trying to get into audio, mixing, mastering, even in live sound, your hearing is extremely important. And it's one of those topics that a lot of people don't like to talk about a lot because they think, oh, if you have any form of deformity in your hearing, whether that be a dip at 500 hertz or that maybe, like in my case, I never liked getting too deep into water for too long because I thought my eardrums were still perforated, only to find out that they were fully healed. It's a big deal. You should want to protect your hearing because at that point, let's be honest. If you can't hear, why are you buying expensive gear? You can't even fucking hear it anymore. And why are you going to make all these investments and not protect your hearing so that you can continue enjoying those investments? Like your biggest investment is your health at the end of the day, and your ears are part of that.
I would also argue that the biggest detriment to losing your hearing isn't the actual technical ability to listen, but rather the reflection in self-confidence.
Yeah.
I think the cost of self-confidence from losing your hearing is actually more dangerous and hurtful than the actual ability to hear. Who cares if you have a small dip or a like your ears aren't working at 500 hertz very well? That doesn't matter. Like everybody has weird idiosyncrasies with their hearing and ears. Like that's part of being human. But if you have something major and it really fucks with you, you didn't talk about it, Lou, but the reason why you talked about your perforated eardrums and why it was such a big deal to hear that they did heal is because that affected your self-confidence.
Oh yeah, for a long time.
So because of that, like that's the reason why you do hearing protection. That don't fall into peer pressure. Protect your ears as much as you can or want, and get used to that early. That's true.
And I hate to say, I know that part of the fight against it is like when you wear an earplug, it's kind of harder to understand the dictation and just, you know, clarity is just not great. You know, it just sounds like muffle. There's brands like Eargasm and Ultimate Ears that have solutions, and you can actually go to, what are they called? Doctor for the Ears. Is that orthodontist? I forget. ENT? I don't know. Point is, they actually work with different manufacturers that can create custom molded earplugs with filters, kind of like Eargasm, But the benefit here is that they're actually molded to your ear canal and they're actually safe for you to use versus like some manufacturers will do tips that are shorter and then to wider. And then those don't always feel right. They don't always seal right. You can go to your doctor, actually have a mold casted for your ear. 2 weeks later, you can actually have your own custom earplugs that do 20 to 30 decibels of reduction. And you can choose how much reduction depending on the day. If you're just doing a light show, it's not too loud, but you want to protect your hearing, you can do a 10 decibel drop. You can switch out the filter for a 20, a 30. And I may be wrong on this one, but I think they said there's like for extreme cases, like a 40 decibel drop. I'm guessing this is for like military personnel in the gun range and things of that nature. But yeah, literally I was offered that and it's only like $200. Now that sounds like a lot for earplugs, but this is also the guy that spent $1,000 on in-ears because I'm not going to lose my fucking hearing. I need to hear what I need to hear, but I'm not going to lose my hearing over it. So if I can have some really good in-ears when I'm mixing monitors or front of house and I don't have to just go off of the floor monitor, I'm going to do it.
Cool. Sweet. Yeah, that's pretty basic. Just protect your ears. We don't need to go off on that.
Yeah.
The next thing I think is really important. I'm gonna state it, but I think it's more of the antithesis that's more important. For example, we're gonna talk about communication. We've talked a lot about communicating with your clients. We're also talking about communicating with your peers. And yes, of course, we've said a lot, like, if you want to do well in this industry, all you have to do is like reply to emails and text in a timely manner and don't ghost people. Like that goes a long way. But more importantly, like, I wouldn't like be paralyzed with fear by this. Like there's going to be inevitable people that you burn bridges with. But like the point is, do everything you can to avoid burning bridges. Like, don't be the person to burn them. Allow other people to burn them first. And that shouldn't be an issue if you genuinely are of good character. I do recommend standing up for your beliefs no matter what happens. And I do think that if you are constantly communicating most not arguments, but when it comes to business, almost every single problem that you will come across is usually going to boil down to some form of miscommunication.
Yep.
Almost 100% of the time.
Yep.
So just to be specific in your language, to be learning to be articulate, taking the time to say things correctly, to say things often, to show care, like by just asking, like participating a lot in the language and participating in and articulating and not ghosting people, like over communicating shows also like a certain amount of like passion and care that you have for a project, which is also something that goes a long way for people that are hiring you. So just in general, communicate a lot. I don't think there's much more to be said about that.
Communicating even in a bad situation is very important. Knowing how to actually communicate if there is going to be any issues. I'll give an example of this. If you have deadlines and something comes up and you know it's going to be a detriment, don't try to wait till the last second to let them know that there may be something going on that's going to cause a delay. Because if they were betting on that date and there's something that's holding you back from being able to hit that date, they would rather know if there needs to be a pivot, not just in your situation, but if it's like, wait, so what happened? Your computer died? Okay, what if we book a studio for you to finish the mix? They would also offer solutions because they all want the same thing. They want to finish on time. Now, a good example of this, which is something that happened to me last week. I think I sent you the video, DK. My literally 40 feet worth of tenting flew in the air and flew into my neighbor's yard. And my workspace got destroyed. Like my table saws went flying and everything. We had a random kick-up of wind from, I guess in Orange County, they're known as the Santa Ana winds. And literally I watched on my Ring camera as over the course of like 5 to 6 seconds, you just watch a 10 by 40 tent go flying and hit the power lines and everything. Like tools got thrown, tossed. My table saw won't sit still anymore. I had to like put a wedge under it. This was causing issues because it also broke some of the frames that I was building for a studio build out. So I had to buy new wood, recut it, resand it, re-round the edges, do everything all over again on like almost half the order, all because Mother Nature got involved. Well, because of my form of communication with them and always being very genuine, very honest, communicating if there's any concerns or not, even before we start a project. When I let them know, hey, there's going to be 3 days of delay, they were perfectly fine with that. They're like, okay, no worries. It is what it is. Shit happens. Thanks for letting us know, versus just not telling us and making it a delayed order without communication. We'd rather have the communication days in advance. That way we can plan days in advance for changes, versus like, hey, we booked the session expecting you to have all these panels in our place by this date, and you're just telling us last minute that they're not going to be here. If somebody's waiting on a mix because they're going to be showcasing it at a meeting with an A&R and all that kind of stuff, you want to let them know, hey, there might be a 1 to 2 day delay so that they have time to kind of pivot or change up things. Communication is so important. It's whether it's good news or bad news, it's extremely important.
Yeah, to put a cap on this, especially when you don't want to. A common mistake for beginners is like you get really excited with a potential client about the plans and you're like talking about doing it, and you may make the mistake of even starting to work on said project, and then you never talk about the money. And you're in a bad situation because now you have to bring up the money, and you either have to, what I would consider genuinely, I've had my life threatened multiple times because some dumbass that I recommended clients to, he didn't do this, and he did the projects and then doubled down on significantly more than what he thought he was going to pay for. The clients thought that they were going to pay for, and thus it went back on me. Horrible situation. We won't go into that. That's theft. That is straight up theft.
Yeah.
If you do that, you just accept the loss. You're not going to make any money on that. You can't be talking about money after the project is already done or in the middle of the project. That is immoral. What you have to do, especially when it's difficult to do so, be assertive and bring it up.
Yeah.
Bring it up. It is important because when you're in flow state, you want to talk about that stuff before you get into the creative flow state. Take care of that stuff early. Don't be a dumbass. It is.
If the reason you're not bringing it up too is because you don't think they would accept the fee, you would be surprised how many times I've set a fee that I thought would not be received well, and it just gets okayed flat. Just because it's like, yeah, sure, I trust you. This is what you charge. That's fine. But if the reason you're not telling people in advance is because you don't know how they're going to react to the numbers and you don't want to lose a gig, just imagine what happens when you tell them the numbers after. You think they're ever going to hire you again? It doesn't matter how well that session went.
It's theft. Yeah. It's immoral.
I remember
it's so immoral.
I went on tour and I told the person that I was going on tour with, like, hey, I charge X amount day to day. Like, if you're just booking me for 1 to 2 shows, like, I charge X amount. But because you're offering me, X amount of tours in X amount of short amount of time, I'm willing to do X number. When it came time to invoice, on the invoice, I put my regular number, and then in the discounts line, I discounted the appropriate number. Somebody read that at the accounting side of things and texted the management saying, like, hey, why is he charging this? I thought he was charging this. I had to explain to them, hey, I told you, normally I charge this, but I discounted it. If you look at the final number is what we agreed to. I'm not charging you more. Once again, I'm just letting you know this is my normal rate. Here's the discount that I offered you.
Oh,
that's
so
what
they were
is.
just stupid. They
didn't fully. They looked at the line item. They didn't look at the total, and I was like, But even then, like, because they thought I was going to charge them more, I instantly got a text like, hey, what's going on? I thought we agreed to this. It's like, we did. Look at it. And once he saw it, he's like, oh, my bad. Yeah. That's on me. So it's extremely important that you communicate well, especially numbers. If you told them you normally this and that, and you want them to always remember that your normal number is this and not to lock you in at a lower number, what you can do is put that line item there and put a different line item saying one-time discount because of this stipulation.
Yeah. Communication is so important. Also, if you make deals on the phone, immediately text them or email them afterwards.
Email them in California. Text doesn't count.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think there's something about that like if you just texted it, that it's like, well, that's just conversation, but it becomes official when it's an email. I'll look it up right now to verify myself.
Yeah, all right, but regardless, like email them right afterwards the outline of your deal right after you say it on the phone. Hey, this is what we agreed on the phone. I'm just sending you to remind you so we have this on record. And if at all possible, Leslie Brathwaite's like never make deals on the phone. That's the best thing. You want to have records of everything. In general, I would say this. First off, there's not as much money in the music industry. People will try to screw you over. People are scrapping. Like it's kind of dog eat dog a little bit more than other industries here, because of that is the actual part of the music industry. It's really boring. It's really bad. It's really painful to deal with. The cool thing is the higher up you go, the less and less toxic people there are. That's like people kind of sift themselves out at the bottom if they're continuously like that. In general, to protect you, I recommend protecting yourself through over-communication constantly. But more importantly, if for some reason you don't protect yourself, you accidentally send the client the file before they pay, or you didn't properly negotiate the price, you have no leverage. That's your fault. It's never the client's fault. I would assume full responsibility and just take that as a loss.
FilePass
if
can
you
help
don't
you out
protect,
here.
yeah, FilePass, which by the way, we are sponsored by, go to mixingmusicpodcast.com/FilePass, which will lock the file until the client is paid for it.
And also I found the confirmation. So it says here in California, while text agreements are can technically be held up in court, the state statute of frauds generally excludes text messages as a valid form of written agreement for certain contracts, meaning they may not be considered fully enforceable depending on the nature of the contract and the specific circumstances. Emails, however, can be considered legally binding under the right conditions. So you're much safer making agreements over email or reconfirming those and just saying, hey, can you just say confirmed? If I got anything wrong, please let me know over email. But if you're relying on that text, I hate to tell you, but that may not be a good defense.
All right, we're going to move on because we have 3 points left and we're way over time. Next one is boundaries. Now, Lou and I have positive and negative reasons for this, like why boundaries are something you should be doing. And then I'm going to also argue why boundaries are not. Both are good things to think about. Lou, pro boundaries. All
right, pro boundaries. I think it's important to understand what you are after. I understand that most times, depending how old you are, you may not understand what it is you're after. You just want to be in the industry. But if you're one of those that kind of fell in love with a certain process pretty early on or not, once you've kind of set your mind to wanting to do that one specific thing, not everything actually helps you build credibility or a career in that one specific thing. For instance, if you want to only be a mastering engineer, like you took an internship and all that kind of stuff, and pretty early on you're like, dude, I fell in love with mastering. I think it's okay to start saying no to certain projects and setting boundaries to the types of things you'll do. You'll still mix, but it's because, hey, mixing leads to mastering. I can offer my mastering services. And if they ever find another mixing engineer, I can still offer myself as a mastering engineer to them. So it's kind of just keeping the network growing, and the work is still coming in until I'm solidified in mastering. But doing front of house engineering may not be conducive to that, because there's also the notion that people who do live sound don't always have the best hearing or whatever. That's not really the case. But we can't control what the public thinks. We don't control what society is presuming about us. We just know what we want to do and what can help. So if you're over here doing live audio for a soccer field, that's cool. That will help you pay your bills, but it's not a gig that necessarily you want to showcase. So if you want to set boundaries and say, hey, I don't really want to do those things, or I want to offer those things or accept gigs like that anymore, then you can start setting your boundaries so that you kind of have a straight and forward path. But I also agree with what DK is about to bring up, which is on the opposite side about the cons of setting boundaries too soon.
Yeah. Okay. So my counter argument for this, which again, these are things that you're going to have to navigate on your own. So we're just giving you ideas and things to think about in order to make your own decisions. If you are early in your career, I wouldn't force a niche. A niche may be something practical. There's arguments and potential data being shown right now. Like if you're not in LA, and even even if you are in LA, especially more so if you're not in LA, New York, or Tennessee, in Nashville. If you're outside of major music cities, there is no data to support that just being a mixing engineer makes more money or is a better strategy than being the I do it all warehouse. When music markets are small, it may be more practical and valuable to set up a business where you are the recording engineer, you are the mixing engineer, you are the mastering engineer, and the producer. You're a one-stop shop for everything. That seems to be really valuable in smaller music cities.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, in big music cities, it was historically, you do not just like it's in your best interest to niche. It's like you almost do have to niche because the competition is too fierce to not niche. That being said, the responsibilities of producers is breaking down every year and like kind of spreading out and becoming more generalized. A lot of producers are mixing, a lot of mixers are mastering. It's kind of blurring the lines. That being said, when you're early in your career, this is my favorite metaphor. When you're early in your career and there's a lot of and you're going down various different life roads and you're driving down these life roads and there's a fork in the path, you should just choose whatever fork you like. And if you go down if you choose to turn left, for example, and you find out it's a dead end, you know what's great about that is that you can go back and take the right road, but now you know for sure that going down the right side is the right decision. So it's like the cost of making a mistake for the gain of having confidence in going back and like correcting that mistake is worth it most of the time. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
That was poorly articulated, but I think
trial by fire is a great way to learn,
especially early on. Like people pay money, like people lose money from mistakes. So if you can make those mistakes early when there's less money on the line, that is literally worth their weight in gold.
Now, there's times where you can't do that, but it's like DK said, like if you can do it early when you have less risk to your name. Less risk to your name. Like
the amount that I charge for mixes now, if I made a simple mistake that I made in the first couple of years, I would actually lose way more money now. I have a lot more at risk than if I made those mistakes in my first few years. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. Just commit. I would recommend early on in your career, instead of niching down, like say yes to everything and figure out what you do and don't like. Like, don't prematurely decide. Very rarely do freaks of nature know exactly what they want to do before starting anything. Or like their parents were a mixer, so they grew up wanting to be a mixer. That's super rare. Most people don't figure out exactly what they niche into, even until their 30s. Don't force it. Just say yes to everything. So that's my counter argument to boundaries. That being said, just like what Lou said, if you have values, first off, this goes into like the idea of like, maybe we can expand boundaries into like understanding, like properly dictate your values. Again, if you are religious, you are typically given values. Like Sundays, we don't work, right? And if you're not religious, even more so, you need to properly sit down and write down your values.
Yeah.
Family time is important to me, or not. Having a dog is important to me, or not. Going on vacations is important to me, or not. Whatever it is, dictate and actually write down physically, like on a piece of paper, on a whiteboard or something, write down what your values are. I will take weekends off. I will take time for my family. Eventually, I want to get married, or if you're already married, I will dedicate every week to go on a date with my wife or not. I will do this. There's no point of setting up boundaries if you don't have a articulated specific value to go off of. So take the time to write down your values. That's really important. Again, religion, regardless of how you feel about it, that's like the one nice thing about religion is like a lot of these values are already predictated. That can be bad, but that's also pretty practical from this perspective. So,
now in our industry, like having dedicated days off can be challenging depending on the field you go into. If you're a recording engineer and you're just starting out, you might have to work that Sunday night or the Saturday going into it. And so you're tired all of Sunday and may not want to go out. That's kind of an early on issue.
I wouldn't even worry about that. I think those things will I think those opportunities will phase themselves out, and you'll miss out on opportunities, but like you also won't feel bad about missing out on those opportunities if you are for sure on your values. Like I'd rather be, if you are 100% certain that I'm going to take Sundays off every week, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities down the road where it was only on Sunday. But that being said, if that was your value to begin with, you won't even feel bad about missing those opportunities, which is why you just want to dictate those values to begin with.
And what's cool is that this kind of ties into the whole networking and relationship building that we talked about earlier, because the reality is, as many opportunities that are, quote unquote, missed, some of them are handed away on purpose, not because they're not worth it for somebody else or not another. But DK, I think you remember the reason that you got the first gig with Trey Songz is because I was at Nick Cannon's place installing a custom acrylic display case for his TV that I had custom, like we did a whole thing. We were building out his studios and all that kind of stuff. And in his gym, he's like, I want a TV frame that has backlighting and everything, completely acrylic, but I don't want to be able to see it through it. I want that milky see-through kind of thing so that when the lights hit it, it saturates. And I kid you not, I get a call from Trey Songz's manager as this giant acrylic thing that could break is on my shoulder. And, you're trying to answer every call that you can. He's like, can you come to Trey Songz right now? I'm like, hey, I can't. I'm in the middle of something. It'd be rude to the client if I left, but let me call somebody that I know. And I called DK because I'm like, yo, DK, I trust you. You're going to go over here and this and that. Not every missed opportunity because of the boundaries you set is going to be the one that breaks it. Sometimes opportunities come up because somebody else's boundaries can't be broken and they know that you're available, you're willing to within a certain time frame. And if they know your boundaries and it's not if it's outside of those boundaries, right? They might just give you the call anyways. These opportunities come up because of trust and relationships that you've built. The reason that some people get calls is not just because they were last minute available. It's because they were a trusted resource. So if you really don't want to work Sundays and you think that's going to make you lose the gig, I think you forget what really makes the gig. It's the trust you build with the people around you, not the schedule you specifically have. Now, if you're trying to be somebody's dedicated person and that person wants somebody who's going to be always available on the call, then yeah, maybe that gig's not for you, but that doesn't mean that there's not another gig that's going to work out for you. Don't worry about missing the opportunity if your boundaries are that important to you. And that's kind of my point of it all. In my case, I've brought it up before, like my relationship is the reason of my boundaries. Above anything else, like I have to miss a birthday party. I don't really care that much, unless it's my mom or my dad's birthday party, I will miss a birthday party or my wife's. But, at the end of the day, I don't look back and think, oh, because of my boundaries, I'm not successful.
Okay, so I think the worst thing that you can do, putting a cap on this, the worst thing you can do is just not write down your values so you get rolled over or you accidentally set too many boundaries and just miss opportunities that you later regret because you didn't know exactly what you wanted to do. So write down your values, take your time, be specific.
Yeah.
And then leave a lot of things open-ended. Like if you genuinely don't care about having Sundays off, don't write it down. Just write down things that you're very specific about. Okay, the next one, there's only like 3 left. We're going to blast through this. This one is very, very quick. When starting out, when getting plugins, don't buy 1,000 plugins. Don't feel FOMO.
Yeah, you don't
That's a
need
waste
to.
of time. That's a waste of time, waste of energy to feel FOMO. If anything, when you get a DAW, subscribe to like one subscription platform, whether that's Plugin Alliance, Waves, or Slate. Obviously, 2 of 3 of those. One of those is obviously superior. Arturia, there's a lot of other subscription things. Autotune. Most of these tools have a lot of different tools. Even Autotune has compressors and EQs that are like relatively...
Actually, vocal EQ is pretty great.
Yeah, so it's like... And that vocal EQ can actually be used on anything, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, just pick one, commit to it. You don't need to have everything. As you get older and have more experience and have more income to be able to dedicate to those subscriptions, then build it up, but it's not necessary. Just commit to one. No need to feel FOMO about it. Next one. This is really important to all of us. Relinquish the need for control. This is more of like a self-serving thing. So it's less, we wrote down learn to work with a team, but I think it's more relinquish the need for control. Yeah, which like I think that's like a good way of articulating it, but I think the best fully encapsulating way of articulating it is just like understand your needs for validation and your needs for control, become aware of those needs and mitigate those needs when necessary. So it's like understand when to ask for help, when to delegate certain tasks. And these all stems from a desire to control, which usually is stemmed from a fear of something, a fear of making mistakes, a fear of losing control, something more inwards, reflective of projecting something that is deeper. So just become aware of that. That can really hurt you, especially if you do end up running like your own studio and you decide to someone asks you to be an intern or a volunteer for the studio, and now you have to start delegating things. Like, don't be afraid to relinquish some controls and allow other people to learn. So that's that. There's a lot of, because we're running out of time, I'm going to skip forward. Lou, I know you have a lot of thoughts about that, but I'm sorry. The last thing, and this is really, really, really important, this is part of the business mind, is systematizing as you go. Mm-hmm. This is not something that like you do, you can't systematize everything. Well, you can, but I would advise against trying to systematize every single part of your process before starting your process. I would also advise against starting your process and not learning from your mistakes and systematizing things. For example, systematize your invoicing system, systematize your emailing and communication system, your website. Instead of having people contact you, maybe you have a built-in form where people tell you what they want. Systematize your call to actions, maybe your weekly non-negotiables. Like every week on Monday, we record the podcast. Monday mornings, we record the podcast. Like systematize your schedule, your project management, your emails, your marketing, your social media. Make habits and systematize everything as much as possible, especially based on the mistakes that you make. Like, don't allow a mistake to go on being repeated because you didn't correct the system that allowed that mistake to thrive. And again, going back to the previous point about communication and boundaries and stuff, like any mistake that you make where like someone says, "Oh, I thought you promised me a deal," and you don't remember or you don't have a record of what that original deal was, that's your fault. You're going to have to take it on the butt. And so just be aware, like avoid that as much as possible. Protect yourself in every way possible in a respectful manner. So just systematize everything. I would even have a system where like I made a I don't use it as much anymore because I realize it's not that helpful, but like even going down the rabbit hole of like, I had like a template email that I would send to people when delivering their files. And it had like a GIF and like I created a button. So it like looked really professional, which goes into the PR. Maybe I actually should start using that again, now that I'm thinking about it. But it's like a really professional way of sending them their finished files when the mix is done.
I got that from you, and I created my own Google template with that, which is surprisingly easy to do. So anybody hearing this, like, I would take the advice, because when I first saw it, I was like, "Ooh, damn, I want to do that." And now I do that. And people once in a while, like friends that I work with, you know, there's kind of like that moment where you just kind of want to send them a normal email. You don't want to send them the commercial email, if you will. But sometimes I'll send them that template, and they'll be like, "Ha, I like it." And it's just kind of funny because it does look very different, like when you deliver a file with that.
Yeah, it's very professional. Nice. Presentation is important. So especially in the early stages, I think that like that formal presentation, that business presentation, goes a long way than it does now. So I think taking the time to systemize things, even signing up for like free services like Calendly, where people are allowed to book if it's the free version, then you can only set one type of appointment, but it like automatically connects to your Google Calendars, which is another type of system. And I use Trello for project management to talk about so I write down what mixes I'm doing right now, when they're due, some specific requests, and I can move them to different parts of the board. It's like right now I'm currently mixing it. I'm waiting for payment. So I know exactly what's going on. Nothing falls in between the cracks for me. Because of that, Or I was talking about Calendly, where it's like you can send them a link to sign up for when they can sign up for like a 20-minute call for you instead of going back and forth. If you systemize the calling thing, it's not even about making it easier, but it's a lot also about the PR, the presentation. If you, like, honestly speaking, in our neurotic, creative, low conscientiousness industry, if you can stand out by presenting yourself as being efficient and conscientious, meaning that you seem super organized, that branding goes way further than anything else in our industry. Like, to be the guy that seems reliable, that presents himself as like, to be the type of guy that seems goal-oriented and doesn't have ADHD, that does follow a calendar, like that presentation and branding is so effective in this industry, because really this industry is famously neurotic and ADHD and ghosting people and overly emotional and not focused. Is famously so. Again, those problems do sift themselves out. The further you go up the ladder, the more you notice that those are never issues. And I think that says a lot. I genuinely think that says a lot about the industry. It's being chaotic and not having systems is for the bottom feeders. And it is annoying. You have to deal with those people in order to rise to the top. So just be aware of that. Be highly conscientious. Like work on systematizing every part of your process. And that's it. That's the 15th or 16th or whatever point that we made. I really hope that there's a lot of things that people could take away from this list. These are things that we can add another 15 to these, but these are some of the most important things. As you notice, there's only a few technical things, like when it comes to gear or software or techniques or things like that. Most of these are more business-minded. And again, this list was for those that are looking to build a career. So if you want us to talk about other things, or if you have other ideas, things that we should have added to the list or want us to expound on from our own perspectives, go ahead on Spotify. You can leave comments. If you're watching on YouTube, you can leave comments. Like, please leave comments. And then we would love to make more episodes based on comments. We have so few comments and requests for episodes that 99% chance we will actually make an episode. If you have a good comment, granted, some comments and suggestions are stupid.
Granted, I say or bound to be.
Yeah, they're bound to be stupid. Some of them are stupid, or they're accidentally things that we've covered recently. But like, take the risk, suggest topics, ask sincere questions, and we are likely to respond to them in some way, shape, or form. In fact, the next episode is from a client request, someone that has requested a number of episodes, actually. On that note, please leave comments on Spotify, suggestions or your own thoughts, things that you would have added to the list, or leave comments on YouTube or whatever platform allows for comments. And on that note, happy mixing, my friends, and stay saucy.